Hello and welcome to me in the slightly more darker than usual place that I am. Just before I start, I want to thank everybody for getting me to almost 500 subscribers. We're like 18 away now. Also, you can subscribe if you are one of the 79.6% of people that YouTube tells me is not subscribed that watches these videos. And you can help me get to 500 subscribers and beyond. Thank you. But thanks very much. I've only really been doing this for like nearly 2 months now, and it's good to see some progress on it. Everybody's been really kind. People are finding the tutorials helpful, and I'm happy to keep making them. Today, we are going to be discussing filtering, and we're going to be going from slightly basic, kind of beyond low pass, but what you can do kind of beyond that, low pass, high pass, whatever. And then we're going to be doing some really weird stuff and utilizing some devices that really have nothing to do with filtering to make weird filters. And we are going to be doing that in order of weirdness. So we're going to start with the least weird things, and then we're going to move up to the weirdest stuff, I think. Yeah, so the most popular synth, I would say, arguably, at the moment is Serum. People like Serum because it's really good at wavetable stuff. It's got a wavetable editor. I also like Serum. And also because it's got a lot of filters. It has loads of like normal, high pass, low pass, lots of multi-mode filters where you can morph between different filters, lots of static flangers, comb filters, phasers, weird variations on stuff like that, reverb filters, but convolution filters, which we will be able to emulate to an extent. And yeah, just loads of stuff like that. So it would seem on the surface that BITWIG doesn't have as many filter options, but it probably has like way more. And I'm going to show you how to get all of those filters and like 100 times more in this video. So we are going to start with basic stuff. So we've got an EQ Plus here. This is the new EQ that we have. You can do this with EQ5 or whatever. So in here you've got all these different filter shapes that you can set the different points to. So let's start off with like high cut 2. So there's a couple of like boosted frequencies in here, a couple of notches, and then you can use the shift parameter to move that filter shape up and down. So you can get stuff like that. Of course, you can change that around, so we can boost where the resonant frequencies are. We can boost where the low pass frequencies are, we can change where these notches are and stuff like that. And EQ Plus is super flexible by itself. You can draw pretty much any filter shape you want. So going a level beyond this, we would move up to this, what I've got set up here. So this looks a bit weird. So what we've got here is basically the same thing, but we're utilizing filter FM, which you could do in most analog synths. You FM the cutoff frequency of the filter, you can FM resonance, whatever, and that gives you like a kind of a grittier sound. What's cool about BITWIG is that we can set up all of these different points here, and then we have a movable filter that has 5 or 6 different filter points. I guess I said the word points a lot there, but basically we have 5 or 6 different points in here that are creating the filter shape, and we can FM them all by different oscillators at different frequencies, or by one oscillator in different amounts. Anyway, so here's what that sounds like. I've just got a macro over here that's moving some stuff. So let's move this shift down to here to where it was. So that's a good way of getting lots of really distorted, weird FME filter sounds. This is probably a bit over the top, but whatever. So if I turn this off, you can hear the sound going through it. As just a basic wave, I think, being FM'd here. And then all I've got going on here is I've got this triangle FMing this sine, and this is being sent out to a couple of the points, so the frequency of 0.2 and the frequency of 0.3, and this one here is being sent out to the frequency of 0.6 and the frequency of 0.1. There's not really much of a science to how much you FM it, just basically do it until it sounds good, so you can modulate them by huge amounts and have them swinging all over the place. Generally it sounds better if you're FMing the frequency of the points more slightly. So here I'm not really doing a whole lot of FMing, but it's giving it that kind of gritty sound. Just to note, if you want to hear about any more of this stuff in more detail, I am happy to do it. I'm basically just going to be running through different ideas and concepts in this video. If you want me to explore anything in more depth, I'm happy to do that as well. So that's the second one. It's very important to note that an awful lot of the sound of like getting really aggressive filters is driving it through distortion. So I'm turn the distortion off here. Without the distortion, it's kind of more wet, resonant sounding. So yeah, that's cool. That's something else that you can do. So there's already one thing that you can't really do super well in Serum to that extent. So beyond that, we can move away from the EQ. Obviously, you can set up those EQs in really complicated ways, morph between them in really complicated ways, and get really cool results. I'm not going to be going that into detail on this now, but you can do it. Now we're going to move away from the EQ a bit, and we're going to move on to the Resonator Bank. Resonator Bank is a resonator, but we can also use it to get really cool filter stuff. So first of all, you can use it statically to affect a saw wave. So I've just got a basic saw wave here. Let's just solo that. And if you put it through different resonator banks where you've got the frequency set up differently, you're going to get vastly different sounds. And sometimes those can be enough on their own, a saw wave and a bit of white noise through that, and then, you know, maybe put some more effects on it or whatever. What's cool about the Resonator Bank is we've got the same thing, so we can set up these complex filters and we can move them around. So we've got that, and then we can get a vastly different character from this one. So that's super different sounding, and then we've got this one. Those can be key tracked. You can stack them on top of each other. You can do loads of stuff with that. Change around the resonance. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into it, otherwise this video is going to be like 4 hours long. That's another technique you can use. You can also, instead of shifting the whole thing, you can modulate the relationship between those frequencies to create stuff like Formant Filters. So let's turn the mix all the way up there so you can hear properly. And obviously we can move this around. So all I'm doing there is I've got these three which are set up to different resonances. Again, I just did this by ear. This is no like exact science to this or anything. And I'm moving these three forward and I'm moving these three back with this macro knob, and that's creating like a Formant sound. Obviously we can change up where exactly we have these frequencies set, so I've got a slightly different idea here with the same concept. So that's cool, you know, you can do a lot with that. Obviously you can modulate that and modulate this shift at the same time and get crazy stuff. Again, I'm just kind of going through the concept here with you. So that's some cool stuff you can do with the resonator. Then if we go through here to, by the way, I've got a saturator on the end of all of this. Without the saturator, it just sounds a bit more resonant, I suppose. So let's just go with that. Again, this is kind of just set up to show if you're actually making a sound, you're going to really dial this stuff in, but I'm just kind of showing you how flexible it can be. Then I've got this XY effects, and what I've done here is I've set up different resonator banks with slightly different frequency responses or whatever, I guess. And if you morph between those, you can get kind of a wavetable sort of effect. And obviously you can modulate each one of these as you're morphing through them in the XY effects here. We could say change the shift on this one, move this one down, move this one like up here. All of those can be key tracked. There's a lot you can do with that. And again, I'm using this like on a bass note, but you can use this stuff for like chords or whatever you want to do. It works well on everything. I'm just kind of showing you the bass notes so that you get an idea of what it sounds like just by itself. If you're not familiar with the Resonator Bank, you can expand it like this. You can move these points around wherever you want. If you really want to get into it, you can automate the points individually and get really cool sounds doing that. You've got your resonance control. Yeah, sorry, you've got your. Let me just bring up the help here on it. So you've got your resonance for your individual bands here. You've got your band gain, which is how high up they are. You can see that changing there. And you've got your frequency here on the top. So this resonance control is kind of like how thin the peak is, how resonant the peak is. That's the only control there that's kind of, I guess, not necessarily obvious from the GUI. And you can control these globally as well with these 3 knobs. Anyway, that is resonator stuff. There's a lot of things you can do with the resonator. That's another really versatile way of filtering. So here I have got a lot of stuff set up. This is weird filter stuff that's not necessarily what you would regularly do. So we're going to be obviously static flangers, static choruses. There's some obvious stuff like that. I'm going to show you some tricks with that as well. So the first thing I've got here is a chorus. You can turn the modulation depth all the way down on the chorus, and then you can manually move how long the delay is on the chorus. So you get filter shapes like that. By itself, not particularly useful. Where it starts to sound a little bit better is if you stack a bunch of these on top of each other. So in here, I've got like 5 choruses. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 6. Yeah, 5 choruses, and those are going into a saturator. And then I'm using a macro over here to see the delay time here of each of them just by a slightly different amount. Again, it's not set up in any specific way, just kind of by ear, just to show you how you can do it. So let me move through this. Much more useful. Gives you a really phasey sound. With a lot of these sounds, you're going to want to make sure that you cut off your low end, add a separate sub bass in, because they're going to be really phasey for your low frequencies. That's the chorus filter. You can have some of them with a little bit of modulation on it if you want some stereo width. Next one here is the phaser. This is probably, again, pretty obvious. You can change the phaser frequency. Just take off the LFO that is on it by default off. And you can move through it like this. Again, another method, and I'm just going to kind of hammer this home because it's the same for pretty much any effect. This works really well if you stack them on top of each other. With the phaser here, you can change poles. That's basically how many notches are going to be created in the sound that you're phasing. It's going to drastically change the sound as you sweep the frequency. Then, if you stack them on top of each other, you can have them all at slightly different pole amounts. This is 21, that's 30, that's 15. And they're going through a saturator again. So then I've got this macro over here that's changing the frequencies, just slightly different on each one. Let's just move those around just so you can hear them in a different frequency range. Let's change that one up there. Bring that one there. So you can get weird stuff like that. You could do a broader modulation as well. Let me just show you what that would sound like. So let's like really bring that up, really bring that up, and really bring that down. So yeah, that's another way you can use the phaser. You're gonna get cool results. Again, you can stack them together. You could have some combs and some phasers and a low pass with some notches in it, and have that all going through a saturator. That's going to give you a different sound. I like to make presets where I have, you know, a couple of things stacked up together that sound good, and you can get really unique filter shapes. So that is that. Now, next here we've got the comb. Again, pretty obvious. It's just a comb filter. It's a comb filter, sounds like a comb filter. Again, you can get really different results if you have a bunch of these comb filters stacked on top of each other at different frequencies, and you modulate them by different amounts. So I've got 4 here going into a distortion. So you can get really weird results doing that. Again, that's the same kind of concept. Now, this is where we're going to start getting it a little bit weird, and this is where we're going to get into doing stuff that maybe you can't necessarily do with a lot of other stuff. In Serum, you have the reverb filter. Reverb filter is basically a reverb convolution placed on your sound, and then you can move the frequency range of that up. We can't really do that because we don't have a convolver as such where we can that's capable of loading up like complex reverb convolutions that we can then pitch up and down. But we can get a similar kind of effect or the same kind of idea with the built-in amp. So here with the amp, right, we've got these different cabinets. So I've got basically everything in terms of distortion turned off, and you've got these different cab models here, these different cabinet models. So I'm just going to turn the mix up all the way and the color up all the way, and they all sound slightly different. Right, and you can modulate this the width of the cab, the height of the cab, how long it is across, and that's going to give you some kind of similar results in terms of changing the pitch that you detect from the cabinet simulation. So I think I've got a macro set up here. So you can get kind of interesting phasey kind of sounds like that. Let's turn that off. Where this gets interesting is when you stack a bunch of these amps on top of each other. So I've got 3, 4, 5 cabs there stacked up, and I've got a different algorithm on each of them. So I've got this one's C, this one's B, this one's B as well. Let's change that to something else. Let's change it to G, and that one's H, right? And then I've got this macro over here, which is changing these values on each one. So you'll see here, it's bringing that up, bringing that down. It's just changing the size on each one of them in a different amount. And if I play this, we're going to get quite a weird sound. And if I change some of these stuff, so let's change these cabinet types here, like to different ones. We could change the modulation depth or what we're modulating as well, and that's going to change the sound, but we're going to get really different sounds. So you've got a bunch of different like convolution filter sounds there. So that's something else you can do. That's pretty non-traditional. So next, I've got, I think it's this delay. So you can do this with delay as well. Basically a chorus, a phaser, and flanger, they're all basically delays that are set up that you can modulate the time of the delay, and that's what gives you the sound. So you're going to get the same effect if you modulate a delay with a really short time here. But what's different about the delays is you can put individual effects on them, like you could put a rotary on one, you can stack them on top of each other. I've got a vocoder on one, I've got a pitch shifter on one. So that's that. Just thought I'd show that off. That's another thing that you can do. This video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to try and breeze through everything else really quickly. Also, vocoders are really good filters. If you take everything out of the carrier signal here, that's going to just modulate it by itself. So you can get a bunch of really weird sounds doing that. Especially if you stack them on top of each other, as I've done here. You can change the band amount, that's going to make a big difference. Change the filter width here. You can mess with the formant and stuff, and yeah, just layer them on top of each other. You can put a macro on the end and control these different parameters like the high pass, the low pass, how many bands you're putting through there, stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. The other thing you can do with vocoders that I'm just going to show you here really quickly is you could vocode the sound by itself, but also put an effect in there to change the sound slightly. So let me just get the vocoder up here. Now, by default, it's set up with this brown noise in here. Let's get rid of that, so it's vocoding itself. You get this sound. You can get a bunch of different characters out of that, as I showed you. Especially when you stack them on top of each other. But what you can also do is, let's say we threw a Resonator Bank in here. Okay, let's bring the mix down on that a bit, and let's bring a phaser in here. Let's get rid of that, and let's change the frequencies of these with a macro. So let's set up a macro here, and let's change, say, the formant, and let's bring the frequency of this back, frequency of this back. Let's bring these forward, let's bring this back, let's change the shift. Let's change the frequency of the phaser. Let's give it a little bit of panning left to right, and let's see what happens when we turn this knob. And let's throw a saturator at the end of that. Let me just close this off. Let's throw a saturator at the end. Let's bring the brightness up. Let's change the bands here and the percentage as well. Let's make it stereo. Anyway, you would want to spend a bit of time to get it to sound good, but you can see the potential there is, you can do pretty much anything with that. The other thing that's pretty cool to do, and this is the final thing, so we're nearly finished here, is this multiband effects 3. So if we've got this, what I've done is I've set up different vocoders in here. Oh, that one's turned off. I've set up different vocoders in here, and they've all got different settings. So this one's 8 band, it's set to 400%. Formant's set down here. This one, Formant's set differently. Bands are set differently. You can see it's just slightly different each time. And now we've got the where the band separation is, right? And you can do this with everything. You can do this with phasers, you can do this with distortion, you can do it with whatever you want. It's going to give you really weird filter results. But if we change where the bands are, we get a really weird kind of notch filtering that's being done by the phasers, or by the vocoders against each other. So I'll just let you listen to that. And let's change up these vocoders a bit. So let's change the low end one here. Let's bring the bands down, bring this up, change the formant, change that. Let's bring the high cut of that up. Do that, do that. Not really putting any thought into it. I'm just showing you how different you can make it. Okay, so here we go. Let's do that again. So there you go. You can get a bunch of different stuff out of that. Each of those vocoders could, in their carrier effects, have a resonator, some distortion, bit crusher, whatever you want, and that's going to give it a different character. So the purpose of this video is I want to do more complex sound design videos in the future. I want to make sure that everybody kind of gets who watches these videos, because some of you are super advanced, some of you are just starting out. Maybe this is an insight into how I think about putting effects together, layering things on top of each other, and hopefully give you an insight into how you can create more exotic effects from the simple components that we've got. We haven't even gotten into the grid really yet. This is just with the stock effects that we have. We haven't dealt with so much stuff that we could. But anyway, this is a way of creating multiple crazy complex filters in BITWIG with the stock plugins. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more. Let me know if there's anything you want me to do in more depth, or if there's anything else you'd like to see. Thank you very much. Goodbye.